On today's show, it is a very busy time in the NBA as well as for the Atlanta Hawks. I'm joined today by my friend Tyler Jones to dig into what has already happened, what is going to happen, and much more, and it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2011 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday here at the end of June. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. If you're a new customer, you get $150 in terms of dollars in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show to make us your first listen here at Locked On Hawks each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes YouTube, like the video there, as well as on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, etc. This is going to be a two-parter. This is part one that you're listening to or watching right now with my friend Tyler Jones of ATL on 29, joining me to discuss all things Hawks in the midst of a busy time. Free agency opens on Monday. As I'm recording this podcast right now, Don Barlow's team option is going to be up later today. Lots of moving parts. Keaton Wallace and Jacob Toppin have qualifying offers. It's a busy time, but we touch on everything having to do with the Hawks so far this summer, from Onsi Saleh's debut to Kristaps Porzingis trades, NBA draft, next steps, and much more. And it's coming up with part one right now. I am joined once again by good friend of the podcast, one of the co-hosts of ATL on 29, Tyler Jones is back. Hello, sir. How are you on this Sunday?
Well, the Braves won last night, so
they did.
Maybe a little better. But what's the deal? Like, why are they like not good, Brad? Can you help me understand why they're not good? Like, they signed all these guys to these long-term contracts, and outside of Acuna, they all suck. What's the deal? And Olsen, I guess.
Olsen's been pretty good. But yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. And if you're just finding this for the first time, this is what Tyler does to me, either about the Falcons or the Braves, usually at the beginning of the podcast. It's not been good. To name a few names: Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris. Austin Riley has been better than those guys, but not very good this year. Pitching's all hurt. It's just everything's going wrong. It is what it is. It's not a lot of fun. But you're right. They won last night. We're talking on Sunday. Maybe they'll win today. We'll see. There's a lot going on. You and I are talking like lunch hour on Sunday, and this morning on a day that's supposed to be kind of a slower day in between the drafts and free agency, we got LeBron opting in and maybe kind of putting out a statement that's like, maybe trade me. He didn't say that, but it's like kind of an odd statement. Malik Beasley, who was a free agent, is now under a federal investigation. That happened today. So far, you got yesterday. Was it Sam Merrill signed a pretty decent chunk of a contract? Like, we're still in the busy season. So I'm timestamping this. It's 12:30 on Sunday. The Hawks have not been involved in any of this stuff yet. Although I would say there's a tangential link to Malik Beasley, because he was probably going back to Detroit on a decent-sized contract. And if that doesn't happen, Detroit is a Nickeil Alexander-Walker team, and the Hawks are as well, potentially. So I say all that. The Hawks haven't done anything officially other than sign undrafted free agents since the draft. I know you want to talk about lots of stuff. We'll talk about Porzingis, obviously, on this conversation, the draft trade, Asa Newell, next steps. Where do you want to start? You want to talk about Onsi? I mean, Onsi kind of announced himself with authority this week.
Yeah, I want to start with Onsi and really compare and contrast like the stark difference in his leadership of the Hawks compared to what was happening with Landry Fields, where, respect to Landry, who I don't think did a bad job. Like, I want to be clear here. Like, I think he did an okay job for an executive, but okay is not good enough if you want to elevate your team to title contention status. And so I think Onsi has kind of rewarded Tony Ressler's credit to Big Tone. He's rewarded Tony Ressler's belief in him with the moves he's made, and more importantly, the process in getting to these moves. The two things that have been so important during this offseason: one, they have not been this leaky faucet organization. Teams, the other 29 teams have been guessing based on what the Hawks currently do or do not have on the roster what they're going to do. But by and large, there was no solid reporting on the draft, and there was no reporting until Porzingis was traded. Basically, it was like 2 seconds. Hawks are leading the trade for Porzingis, and then the trade happened. So it's just one of those things where it's like it's an advantage in this way compared to how it was before. Like if you look back at the Pascal Siakam situation, when the Hawks were trying to trade for Pascal during the summer, they had no real leverage over the Raptors. The Raptors were in no rush to trade Pascal. Pascal wanted the full, boat from the Raptors, so he wasn't interested in being traded. So he was publicly saying to everybody, "Hey, I'm not signing with any team if they trade for me." So the Hawks already have no leverage. So they can't put their best offer forward because they don't know if he's going to sign a contract extension or not. But so like you're basically like not in the running for him. Like you can leak that, hey, we're interested in Pascal, but guess what? You have no pathway to a deal because there was no framework of a deal to be had. Going to this trade deadline, the big talk, Brandon Ingram. One, the Hawks could have traded for Brandon Ingram in the Dyson Daniels deal, right?
Yeah,
that was I'm pretty sure that was on the table. The Hawks decided not to. I think smartly decided not to, just because of everything involved. But I think there might have been a scenario where they got Ingram and Dyson Daniels in the deal, like both together, but they might have given up more. Brandon Ingram's price drops over the course of the season because he gets hurt again. Clear he's not going to resign with the Pelicans. The Pelicans have no leverage over, like the NBA has them over a barrel with Ingram, pretty much. So it's like, all right, Hawks. But the problem is, like, the Hawks' interest keeps leaking out, probably due to the Pelicans. David Griffin on his last leg is in desperation mode. Like, I ain't going to leak ever. It's probably on his side. But as the Hawks organization, I'm speaking from my perspective. You have to know that he's not just going to take your crap deal. Understanding it's the best deal available and he has to make a trade. Of course, they're going, like, you got to have a little bit more gumption, a little bit more patience. And that gumption and patience is what Onsi did to get the first round pick for the Pelicans, where he was like, because I'm pretty sure they didn't just offer the unprotected first round pick, to move up 10 spots. It was like, yo, we got pick protections here and all that. Yeah. And the Hawks were like, nope, hung up the phone.
That was a seller negotiating job at the very least. I mean,
yeah, they're like,
what do we think about us? They did a great job.
Not only going to hang up, we'll take Derek Queen, bro.
And that wasn't the first offer. Yeah, to your point, that was not the first offer. I can tell you that with some big confidence. It wasn't like New Orleans called and said, "This is our offer, take it or leave it." And the Hawks were like, "No, they negotiated them up."
And the Pelicans didn't know what the Hawks were going to do because, again, their draft profile didn't leak. Like, teams were assuming they were in on a big man, but nobody knew. And then all of a sudden, Yegor Demon, there was some buzz with the Hawks with Yegor because Draft Express, Jonathan Gravoni, who has information, kept leaking that the Hawks were interested in, not necessarily interested, but that he kept mocking him 13th. And it was constant, like at the last two mock drafts, Yegor Denham. And so then it's one of those spots where it's like the Pelicans are unsure of what the Hawks are going to do. They might take our guy, who we are apparently fully red-blooded, pilled, committed into taking in Derek Queen. And the Hawks were like, we have that knowledge because you guys have leaked out who you wanted.
Well, and also
widely known.
Bryson Graham,
and we have Bryson Graham. We know for a fact you want this guy at all costs. So we're like, yeah, not only are we willing to take the guy, but we'll take him and probably trade him to some other team who's interested. Like we'll make a betting market of this because we're in a position of strength. We have no real need that has to be filled with a draft pick. That was the biggest takeaway. They had leverage over the Pelicans and they squeezed them for every ounce. Previous GMs from Fields to even President of Basketball Ops Travis Schlenk in the Tony Ressler era have not squeezed either their own players or other teams for every inch. We saw it with the Dyson Daniels deal over the summer, where the Hawks were forced to take on a Cody Zeller, or for no reason. Like, they didn't have to do it, but they did because they were like, we have to get rid of DeJounte. We can't go another summer with DeJounte on our team. Everybody knows it, so we can't get, even though we have the Pelicans in an advantageous situation, considering they just aren't able to pay the tax. We can't squeeze them for every dollar because on our end, we don't have the gumption, we don't have the patience, we don't have the craft and the ability to sell other organizations that we're willing to walk away from the deal. I don't have insider knowledge completely of what happened with Onsi and the Pelicans, but that's how you get possibly the best asset in the NBA right now, considering how good the draft class is next year, and also considering the fact that the Pelicans are not going to be good. Like, they just aren't going to be good due to the construction of their team, not even necessarily because of the talent, just because in today's NBA, it's not just about talent anymore. And that's the failings that the Hawks fell in when they traded for DeJounte. They were like, we're going to upgrade the talent, we're going to get better. Team got significantly worse because the context of the team changed, and they didn't have the pieces to compensate. So, like, that's why I'm just like, overall, I'm like, Onsi is like, he's squeezing every piece of value in every deal that he's trying to make to better the team. And that's how the Hawks ended up with one of the best off seasons in my lifetime as a Hawks fan. Like, the only thing that comes close to this is when Ferry was able to ship off Joe Johnson and Marvin Williams and sign Paul Millsap and DeMar Carroll to those 2-year complete bargain deals that actually ended up messing the Hawks up later on. But still, it's just one of those situations where it's like, it's been like well over a decade since the Hawks have had an offseason this good. And I don't know if any team is going to be able to overcome what the Hawks have done this offseason in terms of like pure process-based decision-making.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action. FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling at FanDuel? You can use FanDuel to track the favorite matches that you have. It also keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. They have offerings across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, game props, future bets, I should say, player props, live betting, and same-game parlays. And they have every single sport and league you can think of as well at FanDuel. That, of course, is headlined by the NBA, which we talk about all the time on this podcast, plus the NFL, MLB, college sports, NHL, UFC. They have golf, tennis, soccer, boxing, and everything in between. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and even makes regular season games feel like they're must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or just watching a bet right into the ninth inning of a baseball game right now, at FanDuel, you feel like you're a part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, if you're a new customer, bet $5 and get $150 in terms of bonus bets if your first bet wins at FanDuel. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. One more time, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So there's obviously a lot to get to. It's like, I agree. I mean, there was lots of doubt, and I saw it, and I got it. Onsi's never been number one decision maker before. I get it. And like, I knew him better than people that are just fans would, because we're not close. I mean, I'll learn more about him now as he gets going. But you ask around the league, people that he worked with, worked around, media people, etc., and everybody's like, that guy's really, really sharp. Like, everybody, people that wouldn't lie to me. You know what I mean? There are people that I know might lie to me, and people that won't. Like, it is what it is, and it's like everyone was like, no, this guy rules. You're gonna like this guy, okay? And then, first week on the job, and look, nobody bats 1,000. Even Sam Presti. Sam Presti just had to make a deal this week to dump a first round pick they made last year for nothing. Yeah. Like, and obviously he's done a phenomenal job at Oklahoma City. They just won the championship. Nobody bats 1,000. So Alex is going to have a mistake at some point. It's going to happen. So far, he has not made one in the first week of prominence. And you're right. There's the advantage of having a bit of cloak and dagger this cycle with even like the Pobo rumors that were still floating out there. It's like, who's in charge over there? And, there's not really, they made these 2 hires midstream of Graham and Dinwiddie. As recently as a month ago, you got the Masai Ujiri thing. And by the way, I haven't said this on the podcast yet. Mark Stein had this too. I'm hearing that they don't want Masai. I mean, it didn't make sense. I'm talking about now. It didn't make sense now. I mean, once Ozzy does this, like, you're not going to go and hire above him, I don't think.
No.
Anyway, there were some advantages, but they leaned into them. They took advantage of them. And look, you know me, I don't particularly like to give out like A+ on many things. Yeah. That draft day trade, like, you can't even argue against it. The only argument you can make is like, what if Derek Queen becomes a star? And sure, totally reasonable argument. That's the way that New Orleans can justify it later on, is if they hit on a star there, they'll be able to say they hit on a star, right? If you're the Hawks, I don't think Queen was their guy. I don't. And this always gets lost. This doesn't matter that much. But even as far back as like the Hunter trade or whatever, anytime there's a trade, people assume that the picks that become other players were the picks the Hawks were going to make. And that's not how this works. Yeah. So, like, it's just not. So anyway, there's not really any way to argue against it. And yeah, maybe New Orleans figures out a way to be 500 and that pick that pick is 10th or 11th or something. Like, okay, cool. Guess what? That's still a good trade. Like, if you can trade 13 for 23 and 11 in the next draft or 14 in the next draft, you still do it. So, like, and that's the downside scenario. Obviously, you already brought it up. The outside scenario, I've shared some of these already, but I'll say another one that I heard from somebody in the league this week that I would describe as a high up person in the front office that was like, basically said what you just said. It might be the best draft asset in the league because you get 2 chances. It's somebody wrote, I think the word was like super pick or something.
I think John Hollinger said super pick.
Yeah, whatever you want to say. It's the Pelicans are the probably more likely bet, but the Bucks are one Giannis ankle tear away from that being a terrible basketball team or trade or whatever.
The Bucks are Giannis missing 2 weeks to being completely out of the playoffs. Like, I mean, that's a bad roster. They were on thin edges last year with Dame Lillard. They have no Dame.
Yeah,
for the rest of the season, their margins are super thin, and they might lose Brook. But Brook Lopez isn't guaranteed to be back on the team. If Brook Lopez isn't back, the Bucks have the same issue the Pelicans have. No real defensive infrastructure because they don't have the physical talents on the defensive side of the floor. Like, they don't have, it's that clear. rim protector or just somebody or like an elite switch guy or a good athlete back there. Like,
they don't really have a theory of the case.
Yeah,
and I get it. Like, Giannis is so good that I get why Milwaukee. You don't trade Giannis unless he has to be traded. So, like, they're kind of stuck. But also, anyway, that's just a secondary thing to say. They have 2 swings of this thing. And yeah, again, if it's the 10th pick, is that going to be as exciting to fans? No, that's a really good trade still. So all that said, I want to say Porzingis for a second because we're already talking about the draft stuff. So let's talk about the trade. I mean, I can assume based on what you just said, you love the trade as much as I did.
Yep.
The pick of Asa Newell, right? So people were picking on me saying I was too low. It's fine. I might be too low on Asa Newell. That's fine. I also said the night of the draft, and I stand by it now, like, he was basically right on my board, like, where they picked. Like, I think that's a totally fine pick. He wasn't the highest guy on my board available, but, like, that doesn't matter. I spent the entire cycle saying how flat this draft was and that we're all way too sure about all this stuff. So I can't turn around and be like, hey, I would have preferred this guy and this guy. Like, okay, whatever. He was totally in the range for me. I like the talent. I think you're higher on him than I am after watching film. So what do you like about Newell? And we'll talk about that, and we'll go back to Porzingis later.
I want to harp on a little bit more on the process because there were other teams that were offered a good deal. Like, there are other teams that could have put pressure on the Pelicans, and if they were willing to give up their guy, if they were willing to lose out on whoever they were going to pick at 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like, the most egregious example being the Bulls, considering their place in the league. Like,
everyone should have less certainty about their guys. It just process-wise, just take your guy.
But you can defend. Like, if I'm the Suns, I can defend not taking, not aggressively trying to squeeze the Pelicans for value because I'm like, Kamen Malulach is there at 10, and he's a perfect fit for what we desperately need, a young center. Like, granted, we make a trade for
like 5 minutes later for
Mark Williams,
but
super desperate to get Mark Williams for some reason, but like still they needed perfect fit. Talent is real. Talent is there. Perfectly fine decision. The Grizzlies are in
your Grizzlies down the street.
The Grizzlies are trying to find max value on the cheapest contract available. They have clearly shown they're not interested in paying the luxury tax. So they're like, Cedric Howard is our only guy. We are going to overspend. We're going to move up 5 spots.
They trade up. They love trading up.
Yeah,
they love trading up in Memphis. And anyway, I like Howard too, but they love trading up in Memphis.
I'm not arguing that they made the right or wrong decision. I'm just saying the decisions they made there is based, granted, they traded up, so it would be the Blazers. Like, the Blazers probably felt at the time that the Grizzlies just offered a better deal. That unprotected first that the Hawks got, they might not have thought Yang would get there at 23 anyway, but I'm just saying that unprotected first probably wasn't on the table for them. And so they were like, we're gonna take this Grizzlies deal that's better than what the Pelicans are, because at the moment they made the trade, it was. So I'm like, all right, but the Bulls take Noah Esenge, and however much you like him, the Chicago Bulls are not in a position to be not trading back in a flat draft. Like, to me, you cannot justify taking Noah Esenge over moving back 11 spots and taking a similar type talent there. Like that. Yep. That's the reality. And quite frankly, the Pelicans put themselves in this position because they were so afraid that their guy, Derek Queen, wouldn't be on the table. The Hawks didn't have a guy. I think they like us. It's clear. I think they like Asa Newell a lot more privately than what we knew until the choice, and then they explained that, hey, we were going to take him he was our guy. He wasn't our guy at 13, but we liked him the most. It's a confluence. He was in the mix. It was confluence. Like, he's in the mix, and just as importantly, if we don't get him and we move back, that's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world.
Right. It's a process thing.
If we lose the guy we want to take, it's not that big a deal, because guess what? We get 2 bites at the apple because we get another first round pick in next year's draft. So the Hawks just not being in love with one guy, understanding, hey, this draft, because at the end of the day, I think the biggest takeaway we had, me, you, and a lot of people about the draft was like, after the top 2, it's pretty flat. Like, at least on pure talent, it's pretty flat. It's an eye of the beholder type draft. And so the Hawks were like, hey, if we lose out on Asa Newell, oh well, we got more guys on the board who we're comfortable with taking. We're okay. Yep. And it helped that the Hawks had 2 picks before, and they were evaluating multiple guys, and they were like, all right, these are our guys. And it was like, there's not really a 10-person gap between everybody we brought in. So why don't we can give up the 22nd pick to get a Porzingis? Because guess what? We feel the guys at 13 are the same as the guys at 22, and we probably don't want to bring it back to 2 rookies when we can get a Kristaps Porzingis. We'll talk about Porzingis later. Yeah. But just overall, it's just like, hey, it's just the process that matters, because that's how you this trade elevates the Hawks from, oh wow, the Hawks sneakily might be Eastern Conference finals caliber team now, to, if things break well for them next year and they get a top 3 pick in a truly special draft, like multiple Cooper flags are in this draft class coming up. Like, I as somebody who's on the periphery of watching draft stuff, these are obvious elite talents.
It seems like there are three consensus guys. Yeah, I mean, so it's early, but yeah.
So it's just like, if you're able to already have this pool of talent you have in your team now, you just added Porzingis, and then on top of that, you can add an elite talent in next year's draft. Like, This is how you build OKC level dominance with what you already have on your team. So that's where I'm like, man, that's hell of a day for Monty.
Yeah. So first of all, we agree on all the process stuff. It's a home run, and like I'm not an overstater, and I think I loved it as much as you did. We don't have to spend a half hour on Asa Newell because we're gonna talk about him during summer league and all. I mean, there's plenty of time to talk about Asa Newell, but I know you've been watching film on him, pre and post. The Hawks, of course, introduced him on Friday. If I missed that, I shared the video on the podcast of Ace's comments. They really like him. Like they did think about him as high as 13. There'll always be a debate on whether they would have taken him there. It doesn't really matter. They ended up with him anyway, and they had him in that range for sure. But what do you kind of like about him? What do you see? I mean, I hate player comparisons personally, but there's always people are throwing those out there, fast and furious at this time of year pre-summer league. But did you like the pick? How do you feel about Asa?
Yeah, so like my initial comparison of Asa Newell was like, what if Mo Gay defensively, but knew what he was doing on the offensive side of the floor? Yeah. Because like defensively, granted, he didn't have the impact that you would think that when I just say that, but I'm just talking about his physical tools and how he moves on the basketball floor, particularly on defense, suggests to me there is some real defensive, like on an NBA floor, there's some real defensive upside considering his size, length, and athleticism. Like just flat out being able to switch 1 through 5 to guard multiple positions. And he had good tape. Like he had really good tape at Georgia defensively. The impact wasn't there in large part because the SEC, one, was the best conference in the world, best conference in Division I basketball history, maybe. But also, like, it was super big. Like, you watch, Brad, it felt like every team had a 7-footer or a near 7-footer who weighed over 250 pounds.
It's definitely a big league.
It was a big league, and like they were, and so it was very hard for. It's a bigger league, less spacing. That means defensive rebounding is hypercritical, and he wasn't a good defensive rebounder when he was asked to guard up, basically. That's not going to be the case at the next level. NBA, I think, actually might be a little smaller than what he was going up night to night. It's a more skill-based league, more vertical-based league than strength-based for the most part. They're of course the behemoths, but overall, like I think Asa's case defensively is going to shine way more than it did in college. Just based on how he's like literally, it's just me based on how he moves and also how he plays. It combined with, I think he was in the worst context for him as an offensive player.
Yeah, they had all kinds of spacing issues for sure. Yeah, I mean, to your point, go ahead.
Not just spacing, like talent issues. Like their guards were slow. Like their guards, not only were their guards not good, they were also like slow. Like they literally could not play faster. And so like, and Asa just to me feels like somebody who needs to play with pace and in transition to maximize his gifts offensively where they are now, where I think he's a real transition threat for the Hawks, a great offensive rebounder, also a damn good finisher, all things considered. Like, again, these were muddied waters he was playing with. And he was what was it? Over 70% at the rim? At the rim,
yeah.
With no spacing, and often him having to self-create for himself. Like, he showed some ability to self-create. It wasn't elite, but just the ability to do that at that level, considering the context that he was in, was pretty impressive to me. So I'm somebody, I'm like, you get him with elite spacing, not even elite, just NBA spacing, I should say. Elite basketball spacing is more what I mean, not necessarily like basketball spacing, and then combined with significantly better guard play. I think Hawks fans are going to be pleasantly surprised with how good he is, like just overall as a player.
Yeah, Georgia, to back you up, I mean, they were in the context of the country, a perfectly fine team. They won 20 games. They weren't a bad team. But in that context, again, the SEC, they were like near the bottom in tempo, near the bottom in turnover rate because of like the lack of spacing, near the bottom 3-point shoot, 3-point attempt rate, all these numbers that are like not great. there's an argument, and we can maybe talk about this, like how he's best maximized. But he was the best player by far, and everybody knew it. So he got a lot of attention and probably was not ready to handle that as like a number one or whatever it was going to be offensive option in that league, which is fine. He was a freshman. Like, he played high level basketball. He's also used to, in a way that a lot of guys aren't. And I this came up with Ricochet last year when I talked about him a lot, both pre and during the season. Newell is not unfamiliar with playing in a supporting role. Like, this is a guy who played at Montverde with Cooper Flagg and Derek Queen. Like, it will not be the first time he's played as not the best player on the team. And I kind of like that, especially for a guy that you're picking in the 20s that probably will never be your best player. Like, he's willing. I think he's, by all accounts, the makeup stuff is really, really good. Not only on the record, like, obviously the Hawks are going to talk up his makeup. They just took him. But even the behind the scenes, like the background stuff, like everybody's like, oh, he's a really good kid, hard worker. Like, all those things are real. And he can fit in. And also, this is one of our hobby horses. Like, he doesn't have to play 20 minutes a game right out of the chute. Like, he probably won't play that much, and he probably shouldn't play that much as a 19-year-old rookie in the NBA. But he can get there. And you're right. Like, the offensive side of the floor, I have more concerns about, but nothing dire. Like, he's got the potential to shoot it. He's not void of feel. Like, he feels the game pretty well. There's some passing flashes in there. He's a really good athlete. He can handle the ball in a way that a lot of guys his size cannot. Yeah. So, like, there's some stuff in there to like. And there, again, if he doesn't shoot, it gets a little bit dicey. But, like, I think he probably will be okay. And if that's okay, then a lot of stuff kind of comes along with it.
There's some real, like, when closeout ability for him. Like, he can attack a closeout, and he showed some things as a driver, like, and quality post up play. Particularly if he's able to post up more consistently against smaller players, I think there's some real mismatch ability with him because he's such a great vertical athlete. I think that's probably his best gift is his vertical athleticism and his second jump ability. Like, smaller players are just going to have a hard time contesting him and keeping him off the offensive glass. And, like, that's a real weapon. Like, that's a skill that will translate to the next level almost right away. So that's where I'm like, if he can develop more, he might have the potential to be more than what his baseline projection might be. But
yeah,
look, I think Capital Avenue Club on Twitter, he brought it up, like, the Hawks kind of hit for a single instead of trying to go for the home run play here with Asa Newell. And maybe it turns into a double or a triple. You don't know. It might end up being a home run, but like, it's a safe pick. Like, he's a real NBA player. I think some fans, wanted either Rasheer Fleming or Nick Clifford.
Sure.
And I'm perfectly fine if the Hawks would have taken them. But I think those two don't have the athleticism or the size, in Nick Clifford's case, where I'm worried that it might not translate to the next level. Like, especially Nick. I think not Nick. I'm sorry. Rasheer. The more I watched, the less I was impressed with him athletically. Like, at least his side-to-side lateral movement just didn't inspire much confidence in me that he could play power forward at all in the NBA today. Like, so that's why I'm like, I'm a little worried. And if he doesn't shoot it, what is he? And he's already 21. That's the big thing. If Asa, we don't know if he'll shoot it or not, but he's 19.
Right. And it's not broken. He's not a zero shooter, which is that matters. Like, I think if they were drafted a guy who, like, we knew couldn't shoot and had this profile, I'd be more worried, to be honest. But look, and you know what? I don't like doing outliers, but because people were trying to make this comparison in a negative way, which blows my mind. People were like bringing up John Collins, like that would be a bad outcome. It's like, number one, you're out of your mind, which we don't have to cover that. But, like, John Collins was not a shooter in college. Like, was not a shooter at all. And then became a regular high 30s, 40% three-point shooter. And you don't necessarily project that, but, like, it is a possible outcome. Like, guys that have touch, which Newell does have, which Collins always had, but, like, also it's about realistic expectations. I don't do this to run on anybody's parade. It's not the point of me doing this bit that I always do. But at number 23 in the draft, if you get a rotation player, not a starter, a rotation player, that's a successful outcome. Are you dancing in the streets? No, but, like, to your double, that's a double. If you get a rotation player at 23, you hit a double in the draft. Like, you did a good job. Better than that, awesome. Like, obviously, I know Jalen went 20, so people are a little bit spoiled by that because Jalen was like a fringe star already, and he went 20th. I get that, but like Kevin Huerter was 19, John Collins was 19. Those guys became NBA starters, and those are like A- to A draft picks, not A+, but like you can't bank on much better than that. Bank on is different than hope for. I'm sure they're hoping for him to become a starter and be this core piece for them. That'd be great. But if he's like the 7th man, you've done well at 23rd overall. Yep. You have. All right, that is it for part 1 of this 2-part conversation. Part 2 should be available in this same podcast feed pretty soon, if not immediately, on Sunday as you're listening to this podcast into Monday. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast as well. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Ratings, reviews appreciated. Please follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my Blue Sky at BT Rowland and my non-podcast work about the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Again, stay tuned for part 2, and we'll see you all next time.